Bruce.
Thank you. Frank, my name is Dean Labute. I'm the chair of the Long-Term Care Transformation Committee of the CARP Windsor-Essex chapter on behalf of our executive board, our more than 2,200 members, and the members of this committee. I want to thank you for joining with us today and agreeing to answer the questions we have forwarded to your attention for your consideration in advance of today's meeting. At this time, I'd like to call upon Gay to present you with the questions. Gay, would you be so kind?
Yes. Hi, Frank. I'm happy to be with you. So I'm a member of the committee, and I'm going to be asking you the questions which you were sent ahead of time. If you can't hear me, please let me know. Okay. So the first question is, what is your party's plan to provide a seamless system of home care, long-term care, and palliative care for our increasing elderly population in Windsor and Essex County?
Well, firstly, thank you all for having me. I very much appreciate you reaching out and allowing me to participate in this event. So a growing number of long-term care facilities are now functioning as smaller residences that look and feel like home, where care is about doing things with residents, not for them, and where families of residents are part of the team in sharing in meaningful activities. The benefits of these improvements have been remarkable. Staff sick time, aggressive incidents, the use of calming drugs, the number of hospital visits, all down. We will support long-term care facilities where residents feel at home. Home care and community-based care solutions are critical to resolving the long-term care crisis. The Ontario Party would provide regular inspections and steep penalties for non-compliance on all long-term care homes. We would require staff to commit to only working at one long-term care facility, as during the pandemic, some staff were working at multiple homes and spreading COVID-19 amongst vulnerable populations. Recruitment efforts need to improve in the industry. Our millennial generation should think of long-term care as a secure career that can provide financial gains for their families. Many smart, young, prospective Canadian medical students are traveling to schools in Ireland, the Caribbean, and abroad, and then finding jobs in the USA. We say it's time to keep these smart students at home. We should also streamline the process for accreditation of foreign-trained healthcare workers, open up more spots in Ontario medical schools, and explore broadening the role of nurse practitioner and the creation of new healthcare provider roles. Thank you.
Thank you, Frank. That was a very thorough answer, and I, for one, am happy that you know about these smaller type of homes that are being provided. So yes, the next question. What specifically will you or your party do to help more seniors stay in their homes?
That's a great question. I remember thinking these thoughts when my grandfather was aging a few years ago. There need to be more options for home and community care. Home care and community-based care solutions are critical to resolving the long-term care crisis. Many seniors simply want to age in place, and nearly a quarter have admitted to supplementing publicly funded home care with private alternatives. Ontario and Canada need to create new healthcare rules to facilitate the demographic of seniors who choose to stay in their private homes. Thanks.
Okay, next question. What is your vision for long-term care? Specifically, we would like you to comment on how your plan will provide a quality and stimulating environment that is based on the individual needs of seniors.
Thanks, Gay. Another good question, and I'm going to refer back to a little bit what we chatted about in the first question. where a growing number of long-term care facilities are now functioning as smaller residences, and they have that home and look feel to it, where care is about doing things with the residences, not for them, and where families of the residences are part of the team that are sharing in these meaningful activities. And the benefits of these improvements have really been remarkable, from staff sick time down, aggressive incidents down, use of calming drugs down, and the number of hospital visits all down.
Is that somebody's tone?
That was good. That was good. And then one last thing with this, compared to other OECD countries, the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, Canada spends significantly less of its long-term care spending on home and community care versus nursing home care. So this is ensuring that the status quo really remains unchallenged, and this needs to change in our opinion.
Thank you, Frank. What is your party's plan to attract and retain healthcare workers in home care and long care? I realize that you've kind of touched on this too, because you're being very thorough. What staffing client ratio does your plan include?
Thanks for the question again. And I am enjoying the music, so whoever's playing music in the background,
I'm so sorry.
turn it down a little bit, that we'll have a sing-along. So many smart, young, prospective Canadian medical students are traveling all across the world, Ireland, the Caribbean, Eastern Europe, and elsewhere. And they're finding jobs when they complete their education in the United States. And we say it's time to keep these smart students at home in Ontario and in Canada. This includes better wages and incentives for all of these students and workers. Streamline the process for accreditation of foreign trained healthcare workers. Open up more spots in Ontario medical schools and explore broadening the role of nurse practitioner and the creation of new healthcare provider roles. We would require staff to commit to only working at one long-term care facility, as during the pandemic, some staff were working at multiple homes and spreading COVID-19 amongst the most vulnerable populations. We would require most staff at nursing homes to be full-time to avoid any of the pandemic hazards encountered in the past 3 years. And in terms of the staffing ratio, we would like to see a staffing ratio of 4 hours per resident. Thanks.
Okay, next question. As an electorate, how do we know you will put your plan into practice? What are your specific timelines and benchmarks for the implementation of the changes you are promising for home care and long-term care?
This was probably my favorite question to participate in. Thanks for asking this question. It's a really good question, and your group has been around a lot of elections, and you've heard a lot of promises throughout your lifetime. So I do really respect this question. And you having a say in who becomes your MPP once every 4 years just isn't enough, in my opinion. Other than at election time, MPPs aren't accountable for following through on their campaign promises. And we're hearing a lot of campaign promises right now. In the past 2 years have highlighted just how frustrating and dangerous that can be for you. The Ontario Party is committed to giving the power back to you, the constituents. We believe this is how a democracy should work, with the constituents having power. You have been dictated to by the Ford and Trudeau governments for far too long. Now is the time to give democratic powers back to you. Once the election is over, the focus of most MPPs at Queen's Park is voting along party lines so they don't get expelled from caucus and can continue to advance their personal careers in legislature. The losers in this situation are you, the voters, because your MPP isn't representing your interest and democracy itself in Ontario. This is what creates frustration, distrust, in declining voter turnout at the constituency levels. Only about 50% of voters are turning out to the polls in the Essex riding in the last couple of elections, and this is a problem. A vote for the Ontario Party will empower you to have decisions in the direction of Ontario. True representative democracy ensures that MPPs can speak freely and vote freely on issues that matter most to you, their constituents. All Ontario Party MPPs will be allowed to vote freely on all bills so they can follow their consciences and truly represent the voices of their constituents. We will also introduce an MPP recall legislation to establish a process for voters like you to remove their MPP if they fail to represent the constituents at Queen's Park. And in terms of a timeline to implement some of our plans, well, we would start implementing plans about as quickly as we can. And we have some plans of grandiose natures, such as MPP recall legislations in our school voucher system. That would take some time to put into practice, but by the end of our 4-year term, we would have the majority of our plans put in place and implemented from smaller scale to larger scale. Thanks for the great questions.
Thank you, Frank. Given that you have now responded to our 5 questions and we have a little bit of time left, would you be willing to respond to 1 or 2 more questions from our chair, Dean LaBute?
Hey, Dean, yeah. Even though I can't see your pretty face, I think we can still have a chat.
That's a cute retort there, Frank. Look at Frank, just for your information, I use screen reading software. I do not use a monitor or a mouse, and therefore you will not find me on the screen. So I call in to all my Zoom meetings that I participate in.
Understood.
FYI. All right.
Understood.
So
Okay. I wondered,
my
Dean,
first question, I'm sorry, go ahead, Frank. What was that?
When you call in, is there still a picture option that would allow you to show your picture on the screen?
Not when I don't have when I don't use a monitor and I don't have a camera.
Okay.
So it'd be rather difficult.
Okay.
I can
But
vouch.
thank you for asking.
I can vouch, Frank. He's not a bad-looking guy.
He's not a bad-looking guy.
No,
All right.
no,
That's
no.
what we all wanted to hear, right?
Donna, the check is in the mail.
Yeah, thank you, Dean.
Okay. Frank, I've got 2 supplementary questions for your consideration. At the height of the COVID, in particular following the second wave, we witnessed thousands of deaths of seniors and persons with disabilities residing in long-term care. The Ford government, in recognition of this, brought into law Bill 218 to provide a protective shield around the long-term care home owners and investors. What we would like to know from you, if you're a party formed government in Ontario, would you immediately rescind Bill 218, commonly referred to as the Support Ontario Recovery and Elections Act?
I don't know much about Bill 218. Would you be able to expand on the nature of it a little bit before I comment?
Well, absolutely. As I mentioned in my comment to you, Bill 18 was made into law with majority government on the part of the Ford government to provide a protective shield around long-term care facility owners and investors, and the same with retirement homes. And this protected them from being sued for negligence and other related legal positions assumed by families and organizations across Ontario. So presently they have this shield of protection to prevent them from being sued for negligence related to the deaths of thousands upon thousands of residents of long-term care facilities Would your party therefore rescind Bill 218
That's a
upon
good
forming
question.
government?
Thanks for asking that question and clarifying on it as well, Dean. Let me ask you another question. Before 218, was there a previous bill that protected?
No, there was not.
From any civil damages? No.
No, there was not.
Okay.
And this was brought in, as I stated to you, just following the second wave of COVID, when the deaths in long-term care and retirement homes of seniors and persons with disabilities were rising day after day.
No, for sure, I respect that. And from some of the statistics that I've seen, 80% of the deaths in Canada are coming from long-term care and in the elderly over the age of 80. So this is a serious issue with respect to COVID. And from what I know that you've just told me from 218, the Ontario Party has policies in place that are very similar to the question that you're asking, where we would remove protective status from the corporations, so they would be held liable for any damages. And this is something that we would rescind, yes. And Pfizer has similar status in Canada right now as well, where they can't be held liable for any damages coming from any of their products. So we do have documented policies in place where you would be able to look up our position for removing special status from corporations and any special interest that protect everyday Ontarians like us.
Okay, Frank, I have one other question for you. Today in Ontario, there are approximately 700,000 Ontarians receiving home care. At the same time, we have approximately 70,000 residents in long-term care facilities. Unfortunately, when it comes to the government budgeting, 87% of the funding goes to funding long-term care, and only 13% goes to the funding of home care. Would an Ontario Party government reverse this inequity in the system?
Yes, we would, and I think we touched on that in the second point of our conversation with Gay, where the ratio of distribution that's happening between nursing home care and home care is inverted and backwards in our opinion. This does need to change with a more fluid equity distribution going towards home care and community care. So
Thank you for that.
We do agree with you on that.
Thank you for that. I'm now going to call upon
And
Henry.
that's also, Dean, that's also documented.
Go ahead, please.
That's also documented too. You can see that on our platform as well.
Okay, very good. I thank you for that. And I'm going to call upon Henry to thank you for joining us today. Henry?
Thanks, Dean. Frank, on behalf of Dean, Anne, Gay, and Donna, thank you for giving us your time. It was unfortunate, perhaps a little amusing the way we started out, but like everyone else, we're human. But we really do appreciate your giving us this time and for us to be able to share these comments with our members in Windsor-Essex.
Oh, wonderful. I appreciate the kind words, and there's no need for an apology. It seems like the more technology we have, the more complicated things become to an extent, right? So,
correct.
But I appreciate for the opportunity. This was really a good exercise for myself and for our team to go through as well. So thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you.
Okay, and have a good day now, Frank.
You as well, everybody.
Bye-bye. Bye.
Okay. Jeremy, my name is Dean Labute. I'm the chair of our Long-Term Care Transformation Committee. And on behalf of CARP Windsor-Essex chapter, our executive board, our more than 2,200 members, and the members of this committee, I want to thank you for agreeing to join us today and to answer the questions we have provided to you in advance of this session. I will call upon Gay to present you with the questions. Gay, would you please?
Yes. Hello, Jeremy. I'm glad that you were finally able to find a slot that worked for all of us.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah, it's yep, trying to squeeze
So,
everybody in.
yes, so I'll be asking you the questions, and if you have any problem hearing me, please let me know.
Yep, all good so far.
Okay, first question. What is your party's plan to provide a seamless system of home care, long-term care, and palliative care for our increasing elderly population in Windsor and Essex County?
Yes, so my understanding is there's say there's around 630 or so long-term care center homes as of 2021, and about 16% of those are public, 57% are private, not-for-profit, and about 27 are private for-profit. So I guess when you're talking seamless system, I was wondering, one of my questions was to clarify before I give maybe a more complete answer is, can you help me understand a little more what you mean by seamless system?
Sure. I think we mean a smooth thing. So if I'm an elderly person, which I am, by the way, but if it comes to the point where I'm not able to have home care anymore and I have to move into a long-term care, how do I do that seamlessly? And then after being either in home care or the long-term care, I need palliative care. How is that going to happen seamlessly?
Okay. So I imagine there are some things that, see, my thought was I was seeing it more as a seamless or something even more that you'd have equivalent care across, the different types of providers, I guess, in a sense. So, but having understood a little more what you're driving at, yeah, I guess that, I would see the Ontario government being able to help facilitate that, maybe people moving from location to location. But maybe if you can help me understand a little more, because when I see people having their choice as to what type of care they want, if they want to be in public or if they want to be in private, what they can afford, what they can't. I wouldn't want the government to control people's choice, I guess, is where I would come from on that. So I would want to help facilitate people to have choice of their own care. Now, if you're talking about just trying the transfer of information between those organizations, I suppose from a public standpoint, we could help definitely ensure that flow of information occurs in an effective, efficient manner. But as far as people choosing the type of care they want, if anything, we'd want to support them in making that choice, but not making the choice for them. So I'm not sure if that answers your question exactly. I think maybe I understood a little differently on my first read. But
okay, maybe one of our other committee members would like to expand on my interpretation. Does anybody else want to help Jeremy out on this? No? Okay.
Well,
We'll have-
maybe
ahead.
Gay, maybe just I can kind of elaborate a little bit. Some like over the past with the pandemic and everything, we lost a lot of residents in these homes.
yes,
Basically, mostly from our point is that a lot of it's happened through the profit homes that have, they didn't have their proper PSPs. They didn't have correct inspections on these people, even
Yes.
before the pandemic, that type of thing. So that's what we basically want you to elaborate on.
okay, well, that's the direction I was going in the first place, I guess. So
Yeah, that's
just trying to make sure I get it right. Okay.
Yeah, well, you're on now.
Yeah, so definitely, like, that is an Ontario Party priority, would be having regular inspections, to ensure that there is at least a minimum standard level of care at all providers, all locations, and that there aren't some that are being left behind where, I guess the elderly and the people within those homes are in some way being left behind. So, and then applying, but putting teeth in it, making sure that there are penalties for people, for those organizations that are not meeting that minimum standard of care. So that would be, I guess, really the true mechanism to ensure that that all are being given, what they need when they need it.
And what would you do as far as PSWs? Like right now, these PSWs are working at the end of their scope kind of thing.
Yeah,
I'm a retired nurse, so I get the fact that, you know, these
Yeah.
PSWs that are working there, they don't have time to spend with these people. They get like, right now, the average, they're trying to say they want to change it to 4 hours of care, which is, they're not even getting probably 12 minutes of care right now. So I think the other question is, what would your party do for changes?
Yeah, can I stop you there? Because is that not our question 4?
Okay.
Is that, would
Yeah.
that not be covered in our question 4?
Okay, I'm just
Yeah.
trying to make him a little bit aware of what we're looking for.
Yeah, no, let's allow Gay to continue with our questions, please.
Yeah.
Okay,
Okay.
so question number 2,
Okay.
what specifically will you or your party do to help more seniors stay in their homes?
So, you know, some of these questions that you would definitely want to provide as specific of answers as possible. I think some of it would involve discovery once you're in government, when you get the full story of what's actually happening behind the scenes. So, because as you can understand, our current government, I wouldn't call them very transparent or truthful. And that's just the reality. I mean, one of our priorities is firing Doug Ford. So, but to replace it with good governance but in the end, really, as far as the Ontario Party goes, in the education system, we want to provide vouchers. So I'm just going to give a bit of a parallel here to give parents choice in education. So we want the government to educate, not indoctrinate. So the education vouchers would allow parents to choose whether or not they want to, you know, public, separate, charter, private, or home. So I believe that a similar approach could potentially be used where so that's based on the average cost per student in Ontario, and then a fraction of that being provided to the parents to then apply as they see fit. So if a senior would prefer to stay at home, would be to empower them to have that spending power to make that choice, would be the way I would think to approach it.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
I'll move on to question 3, and I think you have touched on this in your response to question 1 a little bit, but maybe you'd
Okay.
like to expand. What is your vision for long-term care? Specifically, we would like you to comment on how your plan will provide a quality and stimulating environment that is based on the individual needs of seniors.
Right. So I know there was some, I guess some of the Canadian Armed Forces, as they were helping out with a few homes around Ontario, they identified some serious issues that they were observing. And so it'd be to address that. But in the end as well, I think I don't look to the government as being the experts in this matter either. So I would rather empower the pros, that the government is not the expert, that the people in the field and who are on the ground know more. So I'd rather the government facilitate, good compassionate care than to control it. So that's how I would look at it. I don't know if I understand, if I got the context right at the question, but in making a stimulating environment, a quality environment, I think the government can perhaps help facilitate that. Like we're talking about inspections and maybe encouraging that there be that the actual workers stay, dedicated to one long-term care center, to a home, and not move around. That they develop relationships in those homes and ensure that there's good healthy activities and such, but which I think has proven to be successful in reducing a lot of the side effects or issues that can occur when people bounce around and maybe aren't allowed to actually build those relationships because it's personal, I believe. So that's my take on it. I wouldn't want to assign the government or to even give the impression that the government is the expert in this area. I think the people who actually work in this field are the experts, and to try and facilitate them to do the best job possible.
Okay, now we'll move on to question 4. What is your party's plan to attract and retain healthcare workers in home care and in long-term care? And what staffing client ratio does your plan include?
Right. So these are very specific, and I understand where you're coming from. at the same time, I think there's guidelines, and I've heard 1 to 120, being a ratio. I'm not sure if that's actually really correct or best. But as far as attracting and retaining workers, I think that applies to any career vocation job, is that the pay and the compensation needs to be competitive. So publicly, we could definitely have some control over that. As far as what people do privately, I would hope that that the people would allow their spending and their feet to do the talking as to where they want to go. I don't see the government as being a central solution to it, but I think we could help facilitate that and ensure that, at least publicly, that those public services and the public employees are competitively paid and benefited. But to me, also, to go back to the ratio, I think there would be, there'd be a guideline for that, but also I think there would have to be also not too broad of a brush approach, and acknowledging, depending on if there are certain homes that have certain perhaps more difficult level of care, or different patients that maybe they require more workers, per person. So anything I found, never, in addressing an issue or problem, or trying to optimize the system, it requires usually a little more of a specific thought and deeper thought, depending on what type of a system it is that you're addressing. In this case, healthcare, and to ensure that quality of care, I think there has to be some specific consideration as to the actual home and what type of care and what type of patients they're actually caring for. That'd be my take on it. But yeah, again, I guess it's if a private organization is not competitive, then I would expect that, hopefully, I wouldn't want, let me put it this way, I wouldn't want to force a company to a certain level of pay. But I think you could set a standard or an example through the public services that we can provide in the mix that already exists.
Okay. Question 5. As an electorate, how do we know you will put your plan into practice? What are your specific timelines and benchmarks for the implementation of the changes you are promising for home care and long-term care?
So I think at this point, considering what we know, and maybe what we know we don't know, it'd be difficult to give you specific timelines and milestones. And I think you're going to talk to a lot of people are going to tell you what they're going to do, in their first year or within their term. But the reality is that we've seen those broken promises happen repeatedly. We see that our budgets are not balanced. We see that we ran deficits for the past 10 years, and they're going to run deficits for the next 4 years. So to make promises that I really can't give you 100% confidence that we could keep exactly in terms of timing, I don't want to do that. But what I can say, because that's project specific, because Ontario is in a fiscal and social mess right now. I really truly believe that. But what I can comment to is the people within the Ontario Party, Derek Sloan, Rick Nichols, myself, and all the other candidates, that we're people who have lost our jobs for what we believe in. So in terms of Derek being kicked out of the Conservative caucus as an MP, or Rick Nichols being kicked out as an MPP from Doug Ford's PC caucus for no jab, no job. We're people who have already exercised our convictions in public or private. Personally, for me, I think there's a lot of personal decisions that the government has no business interfering with. So I think people need to have choice, but to give you a promise as to something that right now we don't have enough information to give you, in all honesty, then I'd rather be honest and transparent with you than to give you some promise like a PC, a Liberal, and NDP will give you, and most likely will not meet it because they haven't. The new hospital project was actually approved in 2012. Doug Ford was elected in 2018. For 4 years-ish, he didn't do anything. He approved it as the election approached to go to stage 2, and now he's talking about a 2031 completion date. And so, that just, so 2032, so another 10 years, and that's after going through what he would refer to as an existential threat in the pandemic. So I would, without a doubt, say I wouldn't say, okay, there's no compassion or no care. I think that maybe that's too severe, but I would say there's definitely a severe lack of compassion and care from the Doug Ford PC government and from the Liberals and NDP in our area. They're across Windsor West, Windsor Tecumseh, as well as Essex. There were 3 NDP MPPs for the past 4 years, and I've seen no action, no results from them. So what I can tell you is that we would make this and accelerate this as a priority would be the hospital. And as well, I'll take the same approach when it comes to long-term care. And so that, knowing that we would prioritize that way, that we are people of conviction, that we have, put our jobs on the line for this already and even lost them and go find new employment, which is fine. We'd rather have peace of mind than be aligned with any party or anybody who would cause us to violate that conscience. So that's, I guess, the best thing I could do, because you're coming down to trust. And how would you know that we would put into practice? And ultimately, you have to make a judgment call on the character and the integrity of the person. Now, the PLDP, as I refer to them, they've already proven they won't get it done. But you have people in our party who have already committed to doing the right thing for the right reasons, and in terms of stopping, say, digital ID or other issues like voting on Bill 100, for instance, about they call it an anti-freedom bill. They call it keeping Ontario open, but they want to seize your property. So we've already demonstrated what we will do, and we are doing it now, even though we're not even in office yet. Yeah, I guess that's my best, example of it. So I don't want to just say all the other parties are bad and they're not doing what they said they're going to do. I do want to offer that the fact that we are already acting on our convictions and where we can, when we can, as soon as we can. And that's how we would approach long-term care homes and the concerns that you've outlined here today.
Okay, thank you. Dean, we're about at the 19-minute mark. Did you want me to go ahead?
Yes.
Okay. Jeremy, given that you've now responded to our 5 questions, but our chair has a couple more questions he would like to ask you. Are you willing to try to respond to him?
Yeah, sure. Let's go for it.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay. Jeremy, I ask that your answers be succinct and to the point. Now, the first question, since you've made a statement already that one of your priority commitments is to reforming long-term care.
Sure.
The height of the COVID second wave, when thousands of seniors were dying in long-term care, the Ford government brought into law Bill 218, which is commonly referred to as the Supporting Ontario Recovery and Municipal Elections Act.
Okay.
Under this legislation, a protective shield was placed around the operators, owners of long-term care and retirement home facilities and investors being protected from being sued for negligence by the families of the individuals that died in their facilities. Would your government immediately move to rescind Bill 218?
That has not been stated, no. That's a tricky one, because if you actually do have a long-term care home, because we talk about quality of care, and so that means also being able to have the ability to then enforce when necessary for that quality of care. You kind of put you in a bit of a pickle.
So you're saying your party would not reverse?
There's nothing that we have right now that would say that we would reverse it. I would just say that we would also not encourage any legislation that removes any level of accountability or liability by any organization when they're caring for people. I think that's a bit of a dangerous thing. So we
Okay,
would have to
but-
look at it deeper.
Yes,
But I mean,
because
there's-
as it stands, that legislation is in place, just so you are
Yeah, no,
cognizant of
understood.
that fact.
Understood. There's
Okay.
been no statement of that, but
Right.
yeah.
Okay, my
definitely.
second question deals with the issue of the fact remains that today in Ontario, more than 700,000 Ontarians are recipients of home care. Same time, approximately 70,000 Ontarians reside in long-term care. Unfortunately, under the current government funding, 13% of the funding goes to home care and 87% goes to long-term care.
Right.
Would your party, if they formed government, reverse this inequity in funding?
Yeah, I mean, I think in the end, I don't know if you can elaborate a little more, clarify for me if I'm going off track here, but as I go back to ensuring that we're public servants and we need to treat the people as our employers. And I think they need to have choice in what they want in terms of their care. So if they want to stay at home, then I think we need to work towards that being the solution. And if there is some, like you're saying, some inequity in how those funds are being distributed, then that needs to be corrected. I don't think the government should force anybody to go anywhere they don't want to.
Okay, Jeremy, thank you very much for that. I would now like to call upon Henry to thank you. Henry?
Jeremy, thanks, Dean. Jeremy, on behalf of Dean, Anne, Donna, and Gay, thank you for joining us this afternoon to share your thoughts and your platforms on the various questions that we've asked. We much appreciate it, and we wish you well in the upcoming election.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Thanks for the opportunity. Good questions.
Okay.
Have a good
Bye.
day, Jeremy.
Yep, thanks. Have a good one. Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
See ya.
Bye now.
Bye.